Identity is one of the hot topics that we have been dealing with lately, socially and politically. I have already made several videos on the subject, which I will link to below. Today, however, I want to get more philosophical and talk about what identity is and how one should deal with their own identity. I should warn you that I have a rather unique view on this issue, which I have developed during my philosophy studies in the academy. My professors were rather bewildered by my stance. Let's see what you will think of it. Before we begin, however, it's time I said something about my identity. I'm often asked about my username, and what is the meaning behind it. Well, it's pretty simple if you know your Nietzsche. In Friedrich Nietzsche's book Thus Spake Zarathustra, Zarathustra is this prophetic dude who goes around and preaches Nietzschean thought. And he is sometimes accompanied by two animals, an eagle and a serpent, who even talk to him occasionally. So it's like a Walt Disney movie. No, not really like Disney. The animals are metaphors. The eagle represents his pride, and the serpent represents his wisdom. I launched this channel because I wanted to impart some wisdom, and since my thinking is essentially Nietzschean, I knew it was bound to be Nietzschean wisdom. So the serpent was a very suitable identity. Another question I sometimes get asked is how I wish to be called. Well, that's also pretty simple. Gentlemen, you can call me Zarathustra. Ladies, you may call me Mr. Serpent. Alright, so now that we've got that out of the way, let's get serious. We are talking about identity. Now, traditionally in philosophy, when we talked about the identity of someone or something, we spoke about something that was inherent and essential to their existence. It was something that was constant, and identified you throughout your existence. Thinkers all over the ages have tried to find that thing that is constant in human existence, the thing that gives humans their identity. Then again, there have been those who pointed out that there is nothing constant in our existence, which led them to the conclusion that humans have no real identity, and that our identities are nothing but a social construct. But there is another way to look at it, which is the way I've chosen, and that's to say that identity doesn't have to be constant in order to be real. Any identity that I have at the moment is a real identity, even if in the future I will not identify myself by it. So if the identity isn't inherent in us, where does it come from? In my view, an identity is an extension of part of us. We all have many attributes that are part of our nature or our social status, and an identity is something that is built upon some of those attributes. When we are born, we already have some attributes, which already endow us with some identities. Family identity, ethnic identity, gender identity, national identity, religious identity, and so forth. But any one of these identities can change as we change through life, and we also acquire new attributes on which we can build new identities. So an identity is not something inherent in us which we have to discover. Identity is either something we create, or something others have created which we adopt, because it gives expression to our inherent attributes. In honor of that, the visual element of this video will comprise of people who have turned their identity into a work of art. The philosophers of enlightenment believe that identity is something inherent that we need to discover, and wish to liberate us from false identities, i.e. the identities that are a social construct, so we can live out our authentic identities. They are basically defined two types of authentic human identity. On the one hand, every one of us has an individual identity, which is unique to them alone. On the other hand, they claim that there are certain attributes that are universal and shared by all humans, creating an identity of a universal man. The belief was that if we create a society that is based on the attributes of this universal man, this will also ensure that each of us will have the freedom to develop our individual identity. And so, the modern age was driven by the goal of identifying the universal traits of man and creating a society based on them, which in extreme cases led to collectivist movements like fascism and communism. Then again, if someone did not believe in the universal man, the only identity that was left for them was the individual identity, and so they were driven to extreme individualistic and even egotistical stances. I, on the other hand, reject both of these identities. I don't believe that there is anything in us that is unique or universal. Any one of the attributes that I'm comprised of is shared by some humans. None of them are shared by all humans. So what makes me a unique individual is a unique mixture of these attributes, and every identity is a communal identity. Every one of us has multiple identities. We do not choose these identities. They choose us, as they are an extension of our natural attributes. We dynamically switch between our different identities, and at any given moment there are one or two identities that take over our consciousness, while the other identities are sidelined and exist subconsciously. It is something that we do all the time, and are not even aware of it. But if you think about it, you realize that you are always one of your identities. Right now, for instance, the identities that occupy my consciousness are my YouTuber identity and my philosopher identity. These identities chose me. When I was growing up, I felt a great desire to understand the world around me and find an answer to existential questions, and I found a community, the philosopher community, that shares that desire. I became a YouTuber because I felt compelled to comment on the current cultural state and to share my knowledge, and I've realized that in the YouTube community there is a place for people like me. As I am making my video, I switch between my philosopher identity, which is what I am when I'm thinking about the subject, and my YouTuber identity, which is what I am when I think about how to relate my thoughts to my viewers. But both identities are always very present in my mind, while my other identities are marginalized. At some point I might take a break from making the video and open the TV to watch a football game, and then my identity as a fan of my team will take over my being, and I will forget my YouTuber identity for a while, and so forth. So our consciousness is constantly shifting between our different identities. But some identities are more central than others, while some are peripheral. Right now I'm in my YouTuber identity, but if a member of my family calls me and asks for help, I will leave what I'm doing and go help them, because my family identity is more central than my YouTuber identity. However, even that is dynamic. My YouTuber identity was born only about a year ago, and in time it became very central, and I dedicate a lot of hours to it at the expense of my other identities. One day, however, it might become less important to me, and move to the periphery. And I might even leave YouTube altogether, and then this identity will die. None of my identities are essential to my being. The question is there something beneath these identities? Is there an I, a self that is just the individual me, and will exist even if I had no communal identities? The early 20th century philosopher Martin Heidegger tried to answer this question. He admitted that our being is fluctuating and dynamic, and that in our regular state we perceive ourselves as part of a world with other people in it. But he claimed that there is something that is constant in our being, and that is the knowledge that we are going to die one day. When we think of our forthcoming death, said Heidegger, we are alone to ourselves, and then we experience our authentic existence. So all the times in which we are in our communal identities, we are actually living an inauthentic existence. Like Pascal before him, Heidegger claimed that we lose ourselves in those identities in order to forget about our impending death. This idea that we experience authentic existence only when we think about our death became very central in existentialist thought. Albert Camus, for instance, made it a key theme in his art. In most of his novels and plays, he puts his heroes in situations where there's imminent danger to their lives, and shows how they react in those situations, as a way to explore authentic human existence. But I argue that Heidegger's argument is faulty, and his conclusion does not follow from his premise. Am I really about to die? Yes, I can die at any moment, but statistically I have a few more decades to live. So a few decades from now, there will be a dying person who will consider me as part of his past, but he will be very different from me. He will have different identities, although I have no idea now what these identities will be. That person will die, but he is not me. So if we agree that our being is ever-changing, which Heidegger does agree to, it means that his claim that we face certain death is unsubstantiated. So this whole existentialist belief in authentic self has no legs to stand on. In my view, there is no unique self behind our communal identities. We are the sum of these identities and of our natural attributes, and what makes us unique is the unique combination of these elements. There is nothing in us that remains the same throughout our entire life. For the sake of maintaining a society, we do label every individual with a rigid legal identity, which compels me to honor contracts that my legal identity signed 5 years ago, even though I'm a very different person from him. But other than that, no identity is rigid. So, if this is how we are, how should one conduct their life? Well, first of all, you should always criticize yourself, and see if your identities still make you happy. An identity has to be an extension of what you feel inside, of your natural attributes, but a natural attribute is also something that is changing. As you grow older, your emotional makeup, your physical appearance, your view of the world, your level of energy, the things that you are passionate about, the things that excite you, all change. And the communities you belong to also change. What was once a fun community to belong to a fun identity to have, can become staid, mean-spirited, or even immoral. Don't be stuck on an identity just because it once meant something to you. If it doesn't make you happy anymore, marginalize it, or even discard it altogether. Secondly, you should aspire to live in a free and pluralistic society, a society that will allow you to choose your identities. A society should not impose any identity on you, and should not prevent you from having any identity you want. You should therefore learn to be tolerant of other identities, and also open to them, because you might find a new identity that suits you. And you should work to ensure that your society is free and pluralistic. For my view on how such a society can work, check out my video on multiculturalism. Third, you should be emphatic to other human beings. Since every identity is communal, you will be happy as an integral part of the community, not as a selfish loner. You should develop your social skills, and refrain as much as possible from harming other people. When you harm someone, you then have a choice between two bad options. Either live with the pain of knowing that you harmed someone, or become more hardened and less emphatic. But when you become less emphatic, it damages your communal skills, and takes away your ability to fully enjoy your future identities. Finally, it requires you to regard every human as if they were part of your community, and give them the same kind of empathy. If you find someone to be your enemy in one of your identities, remember that they might actually share one of your other identities, and there you might be friends. Or maybe you don't share an identity now, but one day you will. Or maybe they share an identity with one of your friends, who will feel pain if you harm them. So fight your enemies, but be decent to them. Alright, so that was my basic stance on the question of identity. I hope I've given you some food for thought. But before I go, those of you who managed to stick with this video so far deserve some reward, so I'll talk a little bit more about my identity. Of course, I am more than just my YouTube identity, but so far I've been hiding behind a serpent. I did so because I didn't want people to say that I'm using my sexuality to advance on YouTube. No, I did so because I wanted to keep my non-YouTube identities out of it. But since I am part of this community now, it is time I got more involved, and I intend to start participating in live streams and such. That will require me to reveal more of myself, and I think that my subscribers should be the first I come out to. So, hi guys, my name is Arad. And speaking of identity, I just wanted to point out one thing. Not only am I a straight, cis, white, thin, very able-bodied male, I am also an Israeli. My mere existence triggers SJWs. Bow before me, shitloads.